Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Fashion and where is it going in 2023 is the topic for tonight's conversation. My guest is Tanya Semper, who is the regional director for an organization called FGI, the Fashion Group International. She's an interesting person. I've chatted with her before about some of her own entrepreneurial business ventures, but tonight we're going to be talking about fashion, and she's got an event coming up November 29th, which is going to be setting the scene for what we think are the fashion trends in 2023. And Tanya says that it's kind of interesting. In the past, sort of fashion trends were set by, and I'm thinking when you were talking, Tanya, about that movie, what was it, with Meryl Streep as the dragon lady?
Devil Wears Prada.
Devils Wear Prada, yeah. where there's someone like Meryl Streep that ends up being the one that decides what the fashion trends are going to be. And what you're saying now is that it's not that consultants and people like that. It's now social influencers. So it seems like Instagram and social influencers have taken over trends in the fashion world. Well, that sounds interesting. Tanya Semper, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start off by just explaining, what FGI is, and then we'll come back to this topic, but what this event is on November 29th.
Of course. So Fashion Group International is actually based in New York. We have 26 chapters around the world. And what's interesting is that it's all volunteer based. So individuals run the organizations in all these different chapters. There is a regional director responsible for overseeing each chapter. I am one of them for Toronto. And you could only have that position for 2 years. One of the reasons is because it's a huge time commitment, right? There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of demands. There's a lot of, managing people and so on and so forth. So they've limited it to 2 years so that each chapter's ideas and leadership is fresh, right? So every 2 years, there's a new wave of board members and regional director. And so our ultimate goal is to create unique opportunities from a fashion perspective for our members. So it's a membership-based organization. Individuals subscribe to our newsletter to find out what's hot and trending. They find out what's in the pipeline regarding our events. And we always try to be on the cusp of innovation and what's trendy so that we could be relevant in the industry and provide value to those that are signing up each year to be a member. So you mentioned it earlier that we're doing our next event, which is called our Trends event.
Trends event.
Actually, yeah. So it's called The Future of Fashion. And what's interesting about this is, around the world now, in the past, there was a lot of trends forecasting agencies that existed that were responsible for forecasting trends and helping designers and manufacturers understand what's in the pipeline, everything from what's the Pantone color of the year, what are the fabrics, the textiles, the patterns and all of that. And then that was how businesses operated, right? Now things have changed. While agencies still exist and are still forecasting trends, a lot of brands are looking to the streets. They are looking at what's happening on, mainstream. What are people wearing? What are influencers wearing? Influencers are now leading the industry to some extent. I'm not saying that they are the only source of inspiration, but they are now creating capsule collections in collaboration with a lot of brands. And these influencers oftentimes have an idea somehow about what should be the trends, right? And so now it's no longer following, what the trends forecasting agencies are providing and consulting on, but now these influencers are providing the inspiration for these brands. So it's really interesting to see how these.
What are you going to have? A whole bunch of people from Instagram at your event?
No, of course not. I mean, there's definitely going to be some influencers. There is one that we've selected that is a really interesting personality. And she takes a different approach to how she influences her audiences. She doesn't create capsule collections, however, but she does incorporate fashion into the content. She is also a mother and speaks on behalf of inclusion and diversity and so on. I'm not going to reveal who that individual is. You'll have to follow us on Instagram at FGI Toronto to see who are our speakers. So we have an influencer, then we have a jewelry designer. Her name is actually Rebecca Price. And then we have another individual who's going to be presenting his collections, menswear specifically. And then, of course, more importantly, we've got Frida. So have you ever heard of Frida? It's a
I have.
beautiful upscale boutique. Yeah.
No question.
Okay. They launched, so they've been all over the place. This is a family owned business. They just launched and opened a new store, which is absolutely stunning. It's 2 floors. They have a manufacturing component where they produce some of their collections, which is specifically suiting for women, which I absolutely love. And a lot of people wouldn't, a lot of companies don't necessarily produce in Canada, and they are one of those brands. You might have seen them on Tracy Moore's show. So Tracy Moore usually wears clothing provided by Frida. So we're going to be hosting our event there. The second floor is the perfect platform for having a seated event. So that's where we're going to be presenting 3 different collections and having these 3 individuals who are designers and influencers present how they forecasted trends for 2023. So it's going to be very educational, inspirational as well. And most of all, there's going to be networking opportunities, which FGI is all about.
Fantastic. Sounds like an interesting event. How does one go there?
Well, they're going to have to purchase a ticket. FGI members always have special perks, so they generally get access to reduced pricing.
Yep.
At our events, there's one thing that we really do well and we love doing is we always have a photo shoot element. So basically, who doesn't love a photo shoot? Who doesn't love makeup touch-ups and beauty touch-ups and so on? So we're going to have our Getty fashion photographer there doing photo shoots for individuals who want that beautiful glamour shot. And then we're going to have a beauty touch-up bar forecasting trends from 2023. So colors and palettes and so on, hairstyles. So that'll be really interesting. And in addition to that, there's general admission. So when you're a non-FGI member, you pay a little bit more. And if you want access to the seated presentation, it's a little bit more expensive, but FGI members get all access pass, get priority seating, as well as priority access to all the event activations. But the best way to find out about it is going to be through our social media platform, which I mentioned before. So Instagram, FGI Toronto.
Fantastic. Sounds like a fun event. We're going to take a break and come back in just 2 minutes with Tanya Semper. We're going to ask her a little bit about what she thinks some of the trends are in fashion, a little bit more about Fashion Group International, and this interesting trend that the influencers are really taking precedence over the old agencies and consultants. I think that's interesting. It's sort of like these things that we thought were temporary are taking hold. And Instagram and social influencers are really the new leaders, the new trendsetters. Fascinating. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Tanya Semper. She is the regional director of an organization called Fashion Group International. They've got a big event coming up the end of November where they're going to be presenting trends for 2023 in the fashion business, which we're all interested, whether we're wearing white shirts or striped shirts or what's going on, jeans or back to suits. It's interesting. I put on a tie for the first time a couple of weeks ago in like 2 or 3 years, and I've got like a million ties. And I haven't worn a tie in such a long time. It's like ties were out, but maybe they're coming back. So I'm going to have to ask you for some advice in that regard. Obviously, I'm more interested in men's fashion. Actually, I'm far more interested in women's fashion, but men's fashion is something I have to put on. But you've got this event coming up to talk about that. And it's interesting what you're saying, Tanya, is that it's going to be the social influencers that are going to be the people sort of setting the trends this year rather than the consultants and the Devil Wear Prada, fashion editors, et cetera. So that's kind of interesting. So tell me, how has this trend occurred? Is it just that everyone's on Instagram? I interviewed this person that talked about, what was it called? Fast fashion. And that people were ordering like 10 different outfits from China just so they could take pictures of them and post them on Instagram. So how have these social influencers changed the fashion business?
That's a great question. There is, unfortunately, what has happened to a lot of influencers is that a lot of them have lost or at least tarnished the reputation of influencers, because how influencers came to be is oftentimes, because influencers are producing content quicker than magazines are. And so individuals are looking to influencers for inspiration as to what to wear, how to wear it. tips and tricks. They don't have to wait for magazines to publish it any longer. And that's what happened. As consumers, we became impatient and we wanted content right away. And influencers catered to that need. And that's why now the tables have turned. And it's not to say that forecasting agencies are not relevant, because they are, but influencers are now enabling brands to create brands that definitely incorporate some of the forecasted trends, but using the style that an influencer has, because every influencer is entirely unique. They will take the colors, Pantone colors of the year, which by the way is going to be another purple for 2023, but they'll incorporate that. Yeah. So it was purple as well, a different tone of purple this year. And now it's transitioning to more of a lavender going forward. But influencers will take those colors and take what's been forecasted and incorporate it in their own style, in their streetwear style.
Being a political junkie, I'll tell you that's because no one won control of the House or the Senate so far. So it's blue and red mixed together. It's purple.
There you go. That might be why. Who knows, right? But yeah, so influencers are definitely leading, but I wouldn't say that they are the forecasters. They are just a tool and a source of inspiration for individuals who want real-time access to trends.
Yeah, I got to ask you about this. So many of these influencers are paid or are getting free goods or trips or hotel stays or whatever from the people that they're advertising. Mm-hmm. Are these influencers really unbiased influencers, or are they just a different way of advertising for the brands? And rather than paying, expensive actors and putting it on commercials, they're giving free stuff to someone who's got 1,000 or 10,000 people on Instagram.
Well, you just answered your own question from that respect, right? I mean, there's so many advantages from a brand standpoint as to why they would hire an influencer to create content. And yes, sometimes it is kind of biased. They're being paid to promote a certain product, but the difference is that they're promoting it in their way, their style, using their verbiage. And that's what makes it entirely unique versus a magazine, where magazines would often be paid to, basically there would be an advertorial, which is also it's not as genuine at times, right? And so again, from a brand perspective, I would want, if I was creating my own collection, I would want to get it into the hands of multiple influencers that of course target a similar audience, but do it in a very different way so that I'm covering all my bases. And yes, it's worth the investment, whether you're providing product or whether you're paying that individual, because creating content is actually, and this, you create content all the time, right? You create it on the fly at times, just like we're creating this content, this interview right now in real time. But for other individuals, it takes a lot of time to plan and to batch content and do photo shoots. And it's really, really challenging. And it also requires a lot of creative juices. And so there's a price tag to that.
So what's going to happen at this event on November 29th, you said?
Yes. So November 29th, we're doing it at Frida's. As I had mentioned, it's in a beautiful upscale boutique that just opened. It's on Elm Street. I know that sounds a little creepy. Every time I say Elm Street, I have this visual in my head, but it's really not creepy. It's far from it. It's a stunning location. So we want to leverage that. They just opened. So we're going to be doing a seated presentation of trends forecasting that's going to take place upstairs. So we are capped at 50 individuals. We want to keep it intimate and of course still maintain some social.
But I want to come. Have you got room for me?
You can definitely come. I mean, we'd be happy to have you. We can even show you how ties are now making a comeback, or how they're not, right? Because there's a lot of in your respect, I understand that you're doing a lot of videos and such at home. You want to be comfortable, but you want to be dressy. So for example, Frida caters to that need. She creates suiting that's extra comfortable using spandex and flexible materials. So that's an example, so you can wear a tie that's made from a different material that's a bit more loose fitting, right? Gone are the days where you're kind of wearing a tie that's very high up to your neck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's going to be that. There's going to be 3 presentations. There's going to be an influencer and 2 designers presenting their collections on how they incorporated the forecasted trends into their collections, which will be really useful for anyone who's, in fashion that wants to get ahead of what's been, you don't get access to these forecasted trends very easily, right? So FGI New York has produced a video, which has obviously costed them a pretty penny to create, with a trends forecasting agency. And so while we're presenting that video, we're going to couple it with influencers as well as designers who have already incorporated their collections, and find out how they incorporated, what they incorporated into their collections and how they went about doing it. So it's really a form of inspiration for all of our guests.
Sounds like a fun event. Tell me, you've been involved in the fashion business for a while. How did you get involved in FGI?
Right. So I've been involved in FGI. There was an individual, his name is Roger Gingrich, and he inspired me to join FGI when he was in my position a few years ago. He was actually involved in FGI for many, many years, and he did such a phenomenal job at growing that community. He's now running a company called Canif and doing incredibly well. But that was my segue into Fashion Group International. And as I mentioned, there's a huge time commitment. This is a free, it's a volunteer based, so there's no remuneration, but you're remunerated with the opportunity of networking and meeting really incredible individuals. And most of all, to flex your creative juices and create wonderful experiences for the fashion community that are so different. Every RD will bring something completely different during their 2-year term.
The description on the website is pretty impressive about you, a branding and digital marketing maven who has a knack for making brands irresistible.
Yes. Yes. It took me a long time to cultivate and be able to live into that title. I've worked with a lot of different brands. I've traveled the world working with a lot of different brands. Now my focus is truly in sustainability. And so I consult brands on how to operate more sustainably without compromising style, as well as producing content for consumers who can, definitely live a better lifestyle when it comes to sustainability.
Are brands actually interested in sustainability?
Oh, that's such a great question. They're starting to be, because consumers care. And so there's a shift. And I would say this, if sustainability isn't part of your strategy for 2023, you will miss the boat.
Really?
Because 2023 and so on, even millennials and influencers are starting to care more about the environment and less of fast fashion. And you mentioned earlier, you said, influencers are constantly buying from sources where, clothing is coming from China so that they can keep looking fresh and so on and so forth. But that's changing, because it's about keeping your clothing for longer. Diversify your closet space so that you're utilizing different items at different times and getting creative versus going out and shopping for more products.
Right.
So it's a different mindset, but it's taking precedence, especially it will definitely change. It'll become your priority. Brian, you're going to have more plants in your background. You're maybe going to have a green wall behind you at some point or another.
And you do this through what, a marketing agency or a consulting agency or what?
Yeah. So I have a creative consultancy. So we produce photo shoots, we do brand development, product development, everything related to marketing and communications for a business.
And if people are interested in sustainability of brands and fashion, can they contact you about that?
Absolutely. Yes.
Have you got a website or LinkedIn, or what's the best way to get you?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn, because I'm going through a complete rebrand at the moment. So I'll be operating under Tanya Semper, more of a consultancy, from a consultancy perspective, going forward, and just creating a lot of content under my own name as an influencer.
Now, you told me that this is a 2-year stint for you as executive director or regional president, I guess it is, of Fashion Group International. But you just had a baby, didn't you?
Yes. Clementine is almost 2 years old now.
How do you do, new mom and run a business as well as run regional director for FGI?
Yeah, you know what? That's a really great question. I have a wonderful support system. I have a husband who's very hands-on. I have close family, so they come by pretty regularly to help out. Being a regional director is definitely time consuming. So in theory, we're supposed to do a 2-year term, and we have the luxury of doing a 2-year term. but I am not continuing next year and completing my 2-year term because I've traveled too frequently, and it's very challenging to manage it all, right? I also work with a medical aesthetic brand called Cartessa that's based in the United States. So my responsibility was help expand them in Canada. And this is a beauty company. So it's just too much for one individual to oversee, plus a daughter, and maintaining a good work-life balance, so to speak. So I'm not going to continue because now I'm going to be focusing on international business going forward.
So someone else is coming in.
Yes. And it'll be very exciting.
Do we know who it's going to be?
I don't even know. I don't even know who the candidates are, but I trust that it'll be incredible, and likely someone that you're going to want to interview.
I look forward to it. We're going to take a break and come back with Tanya Semper after the break. And we're going to talk about another event they had, which was something about ageism within the fashion business, and an interesting conversation that they had. And Tanya's going to tell us all about it. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be back in 2 minutes with Tanya Semper. She is the Regional Vice President of Fashion Group International, and they've got a big event on trends coming up on November 29th. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Tanya Semper. She is the Regional Vice President of an organization called Fashion Group International. They've got an event on trends in 2023 coming up November 29th, downtown Toronto. I'm going to go if I can because, my God, you've invited me. You're going to tell me all about ties and purple colors and things like that. It'll be interesting. But an interesting proposition that social influencers are having a far greater impact on the fashion business and on trends than they have in the past, rather than necessarily the professional agencies and consultants and fashion magazines and things like that. And Tanya made a really interesting comment. She said that social influencers are creating content on a minute-by-minute basis far faster than the magazines can. And that makes logical sense. The magazines are probably a couple of months at a date all the time by the time they finally come to either print or online. And so it makes sense that fashion influencers are having this far greater impact. And so I'll be really interested to hear what people have got to say, Tanya. And thank you for bringing this to us and to our attention. But you also told me they had another event about ageism in fashion. Tell me a little bit about that, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So that event took place already. That was last month, and it was incredible. When I went to FGI New York for our global conference, I met this incredible individual. His name is Michael Clinton, and he is the former president for an organization called Hearst Magazines. And they are responsible for all the leading magazines, everything from beauty to lifestyle to fashion, such as Harper's Bazaar and Town and Country and so on and so forth. So I knew after seeing his presentation in New York that I wanted to bring him to Toronto, because he decided to retire from his job and refire by starting a book. He published his own book called Roar. It's just called Roar, actually. So it's all about ageism and disrupting the concept of ageism, because he believes, and rightfully so, he's living up to those standards, has decided to reinvent his life he's definitely older now, right? And so he decided to live his best life at his age. And so he's teaching individuals to also live up to that standard, and he's traveling the world and so on and so forth. So people are living vicariously through him and learning how to do so through his strategies unveiled in the book. But that's not all. That's not why we wanted to do this event. We wanted to do this event because personally, I saw that in the industry and in Fashion Group International Toronto, there are members who are not they're not in the spotlight. And there's a lot of beautiful women that would come and men that would come to our events, and they would be, sometimes shy getting their photo taken at our photo shoot bar. There's sort of like this lack of confidence or lack of opportunity for these individuals. And I felt compelled to bring them forward and create an opportunity that would help them shift their mindset about their age, and also help shift the mindset of our community by incorporating these individuals and making sure that they're represented in the photography as well. So in the past, a lot of our events, or, just in the fashion industry, it's young, it's fresh. And so everybody wants to be forever young, but you can also be forever, you can, how would I say, you can age gracefully and live into your age and be proud of your age, because I feel like that is more relatable, and it is also it's beautiful when someone maintains their beauty and maintains their wrinkles and loves their wrinkles and steps in front of the camera and really owns it. And so this event, of course, we had our photo shoot area set up and we had the beauty touch-ups, but it was beautiful because for the first time, I saw quite a big audience of older individuals come forward to our event, and they felt included. And not only did they feel included, but they felt empowered. So they took center stage. They went on in our photo shoot activation, and they took their pictures, and their testimonials and their journey of confidence are going to be shared. So we did record their story, and are going to be sprinkling that across social media as another form of inspiration for our members.
That's fascinating. You know, we had this big controversy this past couple of months about Lisa Laflamme, the correspondent, the anchor of CTV News that got retired. And some people think that she got retired because she let her hair go gray during the pandemic, because she couldn't get to a hairdresser and get it colored as easily. And so she said, I'm gray, so let's just go gray.
And I love that look.
And there's been a lot of people that have sort of late on social media, at least I've seen, let their gray go gray. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that?
Well, I personally think it suits her beautifully. I think, it's so difficult to maintain your hair color as you're starting to go gray. And it's another thing to just flaunt it, own it. Okay, so your hair is now transitioning to gray. How do you make that gray as silver or as white or as shimmery as possible, right? So how do you amplify the look? And I think she did a great job at that. There's also one of our community members, an FGI member, her name is Win, and she was at our ageism, so the Roar with Confidence event that we just did, and you should see her hair color. So she's fully gray, but her gray has over time transitioned to more of a white, and it's angelic looking. So I have nothing, I think you should take what you have and find a way to embellish it further instead of trying to make it look like what it did when you were much younger, right? It's owning into who you are versus fighting it. I think that's the mindset that we're trying to shift.
Is it different for men than women?
Oh my gosh, it's always been different for men, because women, we're sort of, it's tiring. There's a lot of, and that's why I personally wanted to do that Roar with Confidence event, because I myself have always been, a victim to succumbing to the pressures of society, and wrinkles or, the lax skin, and just, it's difficult to maintain that youthful appearance over time. And so it's tiring. So men we sort of say that men just like age gracefully. They look better with the wrinkles and so on and so forth, and the gray and so on and so forth. But there's still the stigma that women don't age gracefully, and that they can't age gracefully, and they have to do everything in their capacity to stop time and preserve what they have, or turn the clock. But it's just not realistic. And so men do it naturally, but that's because it's been accepted since the beginning of time. All these magazines and beauty magazines are constantly flaunting women that are younger. So for us, we feel like that is the status that we need to strive to, but that's just not realistic.
So Roar with Confidence was about what? Being confident at any age? Being confident in yourself at any age?
That's correct. It's shifting the mindsets so that we are training into the industry to include more individuals who are older and put them on the front covers. Indigo just did they had this beautiful older woman on their in their window, and I can't remember who that was, but it was striking. And it was right after we did the event, and I was just like, wow, this is so beautiful to see that now these brands are incorporating someone who's older and bringing and spotlighting that instead of someone who's younger. It's the industry is shifting. We're not fully there yet, but I think it's welcoming the older demographics. And to go back to Lisa Laflamme, we don't know what happened in her career. We don't know how she was, as an individual working with her. So we can't say to say it was just based on her not wanting to, dye her hair brown for whatever reason. Like, we don't know what really went down behind the scenes. But I know that she looked absolutely stunning, and I know quite a few people that really love that look. So she's off to better things.
So this is interesting. We've talked about ageism in the fashion industry. We've talked about purple being the color for next year. We've talked about this event coming up where you're going to be talking about trends being influenced, if not set, by social influencers more than by the brand consultants in the past. Any other things going on in fashion that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I think Made in Canada is going to be a sort of a stamp. How would I say, like, not a stamp of approval, but it's what a lot of manufacturers and what designers are seeking, because consumers are more intelligent. They're demanding quality. They're demanding things to be, like carbon neutral, for example, zero waste, upcycled. These are, or circular. So there's one trend that's going to be taking precedence, which is circularity. And that means creating a product and understanding its full life cycle. So nothing ever ends up in the waste. And that is something that
circularity.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that word before.
Yeah. So it's basically promoting a circular economy, so that every single product manufacturer is creating a product, understanding what the lifespan is. So it's not about creating more products all the time, and it just, who knows where it ends up, but it's creating a product and understanding where it could be upcycled in the process so that nothing ever ends up in the landfill. So this is something that's going to be quite trendy, but is a long-term solution going forward.
This issue of sustainability, you really think is a trend?
Yeah, I think it's not a trend, but it's going to be, it's mandatory. I think it's something that every single manufacturer, designer needs to start thinking about, if not thinking about, needs to start implementing earlier on, because we're sort of migrating to a stage where this is becoming, it's a necessity. So consumers are going to look for either a stamp that says B Corp certified on a label, because a B Corp certification means that you went through an extensive process to make sure that your company meets the standards and criteria of sustainability.
Now, how do I reconcile that with this idea of fast fashion and a whole bunch of cheap garments coming in from China and child labor and, et cetera, et cetera?
Made in Canada. Made in Canada, because Canada is definitely environmentally friendly. We're advanced. I wouldn't say that we are, more forward than certain areas in Europe, but we're there. And I think if any manufacturer says on their label, Made in Canada, B Corp certified, this is respectable. And I think consumers are going to now start to choose a little bit more wisely based on what are the impacts that this product has on the environment. And they're going to choose a product that, obviously is a little bit more sustainable versus something that just looks good for today, but won't last very long.
Do you think this fast fashion where people are ordering 5 and 10 garments from China just to put on their Instagram is a trend that's going to stay with us? Or is it going to go away as people start worried about sustainability and cost issues?
Well, see, going back to circularity, let's say there's a company, because we've already trained individuals to want new items, trendy items constantly, on an ongoing basis, constantly. We've trained that. Everybody wants what's accessible, right? And we need to untrain that. But there's also something wonderful about having access to new things all the time, right? It keeps things exciting. But if we created these products locally and we understood where they'd end up and made sure that they don't end up in the landfill, and you're taking these products, they're going through the waves of their life cycle. So they're hot and trendy. The influencers are flaunting these products and creating content wearing them. And then they go through the channel. So now they're mainstream, they're available in local stores. And then whoever doesn't want this clothing anymore, they recycle it or upcycle it, and then it gets reinvented back into something else. So if we continue that loop, then nothing will ever, you could be frivolous from that respect. You can wear new, exciting things, but as long as the end product is going back into the cycle and not ending up in our landfills, I think that's key. It's going to take a long time to implement, yes, because from a cost perspective, it's really difficult to compete with Chinese manufacturers.
No question.
You just can't. But the quality is not there. It's not there. It doesn't even make sense to take these items to the dry cleaning, because they're so cheaply made that they're not going to last. So I think it's going to take some time to retrain the way people, shop. But I believe in time, sooner than later, we'll start to be able to shift those mindsets, just like we started shifting those mindsets around ageism.
You talked about the importance of networking, and that one of the reasons why you wanted to be the regional VP for FGI was the contacts you'd make and the networking. I noticed on your website that you have a big mentors dinner, which sounds like that's exactly what it's all about, meeting people that can mentor you in the industry. Can you tell me a little bit about the people in FGI that you get to meet and the mentors dinner and the benefit of the networking?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Mentors event was actually created by another regional director many years ago. And so that is a wonderful experience. We actually did the Mentors dinner already. So it happens once a year. And this is an opportunity where our members get an opportunity to wine, dine, and network with industry leaders, right? So everyone from, the hottest designers to philanthropists to media personalities to stylists. So it's really who's hot and trending, not only locally, but globally. And we bring them in the event and allow individuals to purchase a ticket and have the opportunity to brush shoulders with them. And I think that actually has been our most popular event to date.
And do you get to have a mentors event during your tenure?
Absolutely. It already took place. So it's already done.
So next year's one, you won't be the regional VP anymore.
That's correct. So I will be in attendance, but I will not have to do all of the legwork to make it happen, which I'm really excited about.
Because it's a lot of work, I can well imagine.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a break and come back in just 2 minutes with Tanya Semper, the regional VP of Fashion Group International. And we're going to talk a little bit about if you wanted to get into the fashion business in Canada, can you today? And what would you do to do that? Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're talking tonight about fashion and fashion trends. My guest is Tanya Semper. She is the regional director of Fashion Group International. She's got a big event coming up on November 29th where she's going to be presenting some of the fashion trends for 2023. And one of them is that the color is going to be purple, which is kind of interesting. She's talking about sustainability being one of the big issues. And its circularity, that you got to be able to prove, I guess, the circle of life or the circle of fashion, that you don't end up having fashion going into landfill, and that social influencers are becoming even more important than magazines, fashion magazines, and that sort of Meryl Streep character in Devil's Wear Prada about setting the fashion trends. And this is kind of interesting. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about this event. Tanya, let's take a big step back, though. You've been very successful in the fashion business. You've launched a couple of companies. It sounds like you're consulting with some beauty brands that are trying to expand internationally today. If a young Tanya Semper in her, late teens, early 20s came to you and said, "I want to be in the fashion business," what would you tell her? Is there an opportunity, or is it all being done in New York or Paris or China today?
Oh, well, actually, fashion could be done anywhere. It's what has now become very common is laptop lifestyle. So you could operate digitally. You do not need to go into an office any longer. I think collaborative workspaces has become the norm, where you go into a community-based workspace where you invite all of your teammates and you work from there for a few hours out of the week. Or not at all. And so that's become the new norm. You do not have to work. You don't have to think that you're going into a 9-to-5 environment working for fashion any longer. And the other wonderful thing is that it's become so easy to grow an international brand. And so the opportunity to work internationally is definitely a lot more accessible than it ever has been. So I would encourage individuals to go into fashion, but I would most importantly encourage them to think about, again, the circularity of products and entice companies to, especially if you're getting hired, entice them to look at how they're operating. Because sustainability, like I said, there's more and more jobs that are out there in fashion. I'll give you an example. We just saw a job being publicized from Holt Renfrew, and one of the elements was sustainability. And so that's becoming a topic of the conversation and sort of, a pillar when it comes to the corporate positioning. But going back to opportunities in fashion, they're limitless. I think everybody shops, everybody wants to look great, everybody wants what's trending and hot. You can't go outside, without wearing clothing. So clothing is always going to be around. And
but during the pandemic, everyone did go far more into sweats and spandex and yoga pants and stuff like this.
Absolutely.
Has high fashion come back?
With a pandemic, individuals don't necessarily have the disposable income that they had. They're being a little bit more cautious, especially now with the uncertainty of a recession and, future pandemics. I think we've understood where we should be spending our dollars. And I think for the most part, people want to be comfortable. They want to look great. They want to be, relevant, but they don't want to spend $1,000 on, a shirt as they might have had in the past for something that's, haute couture. So it's changed for sure. Definitely.
If people want to check out Fashion Group International, maybe come to your event or some other future event, or just check you out, how do they best do that?
Yeah, so you can find me personally, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there from a professional standpoint. And then there's Instagram, so Tanya Semper. And then for FGI, fgitoronto.org. As well as we're pretty active on the Instagram page. We launch a lot of, sneak peeks and special promotions, revealing upcoming events and so on for early price tickets and so on. So I think those are definitely, social media is where it's at. As we discussed earlier, influencers are setting, are taking precedence in terms of leading and inspiring masses. Well, we do the same through Instagram as well. So definitely use Instagram as your resource.
Tanya Semper, Regional Vice President for Fashion Group International. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. If I could just end with a couple of my own 2 cents. I'm not a fashion expert, far from it, but it is interesting that some of the trends that you're identifying are trends within, most businesses where, you're talking about the importance of sustainability, circularity, and that it's sort of the social license that companies need to have, whether in mining or real estate or fashion, and that's becoming more important. I think that this trend that social influencers on social media are having a greater impact than some of the sort of the elite experts in the past. One of our political people today might call that gatekeepers. And I think the gatekeepers are less important today than they were in the past. They're still there, but I think it's the masses, everyone, particularly those that are able to create a following and keep that following because they are unbiased and actually provide good advice, are ended up creating more influence. That's why they're social influencers. I think this idea that you present that I think is really kind of interesting, that what do you call it? Laptop
lifestyle.
Laptop lifestyle. Someone else called it digital nomads. I think that there are more and more people, and there was this famous book a little while ago about the world is flat, that you can do business from almost anywhere. And a lot of people questioned that for a long period of time. But I think the pandemic proved that to a certain extent, it's right. But then at the other side, you talked about how important networking is and mentorship and coming out to those events and meeting other people. So there is this ability that you've got that you can run your business to a certain extent from your laptop, but collaboration, networking, mentorship, meeting other people is so critically important as well. So, there's a lot of wealth in a lot of the things you said today, Tanya. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
That's our show for tonight. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and videocasts are available on my own website, briancrombie.com. Thanks for joining us. Tanya, I look forward to seeing you on November 29th. Bye-bye.
Likewise.